consider this. So when you're interacting with your Facebook feed, you have a series of things. They scroll past. You have the option to either like or share them, right? Same kind of thing for Instagram and all the other social media stuff. It's you have a feed of information. You decide whether or not to share this information, decide whether or not to upvote this information. That's what a neuron does in a brain. Okay. So a neuron has a nucleus, the nucleus attached to dendrites. The dendrites get signals, which is binary signals from other neurons. And then however those come in, the neuron has some kind of generator function inside of itself that evaluates that and decides whether or not to fire a signal down the axon, and then that goes off to other neurons, right? That's what you're doing on your Facebook. You're behaving as a neuron in a brain. And when things go viral, when things propagate through social networks, I mean, there's a lot of study on this, it looks kind of like a brainwave, right? It looks like something that's passing through a brain.
Yeah.
So if you and I and everybody else were participating as neurons in a brain, we could not even comprehend the thought that the brain is having, because that thought is one level up.
Now, this is sort of where we get to when we talk about the monarchic vision and our imagined mastery of the world. And the deep frustration we have when the rest of our other little thinking neurons here don't go along with what we imagine the world is for and about and should be about and what its end should be.
Right. It's like a Kurzweil singularity thing. It's like the next level intelligence. How would you even know that there's a next level intelligence? You couldn't talk to it. Right. So postulate for a moment that if you could web enough people together in a like and share network, that they would exceed a certain level to where their network itself was effectively a thinking superorganism, one level up from them. And that there's no way you could know that one way or another. Like the thing.
Thinking superorganism. Now, being a pastor, well, you would call this its body. And in church language, it would be the body of Christ. But the body of Christ has a head. And the head is Christ. And now, head means not only the metaphor of this on here, but also head means source, as in the headwaters of the Nile. So, I mean, he starts talking and it's like, oh, look, we're doing theology, and we didn't even realize it.
Thing I'm talking about right now is kind of unprovable. Now,
unprovable? Well, why? Well, because you're down here and your lab is over here, and you have remember how Peugeot and how many of these conversations says, where are you standing? You do not have the position. These markers have to be a little. Let's see if we can do that. You do not have the position to see this entire thing, even though to some degree that's what we're trying to do in this conversation. But with sufficient humility, you realize this is only sort of my third personal perspective, because my first personal perspective starts way down here, and it's going to be trying to see all of this and maybe look up and see the head, or look back and see the head, etc., 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 etc. Again, someone sent me this video and said, so someone I was in my estuary group said, Paul's really got to see that video. And they were right.
If you had some people in one social network, some other people in another social network, those two social networks might have these kind of internet entities that are thinking different things and are competing with each other for overall available brain space in the human population to survive.
Wow. Again, this is just straight out of the New Testament. You have principalities and powers. Or how about the book of Daniel? You've got the prince of Persia standing in the way of the angel that's trying to get to little old Daniel. Well, how is the prince of Persia standing in the way of getting to little old Daniel? You have to, we experience this all the time with our different little, he's calling them echo chambers. How to convince your father or your mother or your son or your daughter or your neighbor or the citizen that is within your gates of a different perspective. You have to go through their principality. They have a patterned way of thinking. They have a patterned way of belief. Now, again, in modernity, belief is so abstracted, but they have a patterned way of life. They have a patterned way of behavior that is dominated by their principality. And the only way that that is going to change is if a stronger principality comes and unseats it. Red pill, bread pill, conversion, transformation. A stronger power has to take hold of it and exercise it. Why is it that I keep calling Jordan Peterson the unauthorized exorcist? Well, because what is he doing? He is exorcising people who have been in domination. They have had a place in the matrix, a place in the superorganism, and they are pulled from that and they are brought into another one. I mean, these conversations, this is what drove me crazy when I first started doing this, because my other clergy couldn't see because they're all dominant within, basically so deep within the church organism that they couldn't see out of it. This is all New Testament language that's going on here.
So there's some talk in like very dark intellectual circles that I traffic in where they're calling these things egregores, because that's what an egregore is. Like the definition of an egregore was a kind of demon that manifests out of a shared belief system.
A demon that manifests out of a shared belief system. Oh, you mean like school spirit? You mean like the spirit of your church or the spirit of your club or the spirit of your family or the spirit of your city or the spirit of your nation? Now, in a materialist framework, we imagine that this is emergence from below, because matter is foundational and spirit is imagined to be derivative. And so here, this egregore is what these people are creating. Now, the reason that he's saying it this way is because he is deep, again, within a modernist culture. And we don't have, it's not that we don't have language. We've banished language because actually this egregore, he had to pull it back from another source and bring it back into our period and say, oh, look, this is a spirit that is, but here's the question. Is it emergence, or has this spirit lived before? Are there, in fact, a world of spirits that are, in fact, competing against each other? Well, let's just think about this for a moment. This is, again, there's a world of complexity and nuance out there, but when we read history, don't we recognize things? So, yeah, it's low resolution. Yeah, it's limited in participation, but some spirits come around again. In fact, when Jordan Peterson and many in the IDW 1.0 are anxious about what wokeism is going to do, they are worried that the spirit, let's say the spirit of communism, is going to once again descend and occupy the people. This isn't new to us. We don't talk like this most of the time, but isn't this exactly what we're talking about?